CEE Brown in your face.
Have you heard of Everything at Once?
Do you know about Everything at Once?
It's internationally known.
Aliens listen to it.
It's the best ever.
If there's something you're looking for in the 814, or feeling a little bored and think there ain't no more, check out Everything at Once and allow it to be your source. It's that raw podcast that's always showing support, highlighting the scene. No need to take I-90 to Peep or 79 to see how it be. Interviewing your locals with mindsets that are global. Innovators and creators on every single upload. So much going on in the EPA.
Incredible content.
Everything at Once will keep you up to date.
Amazing guests.
What you doing? Come through and hang with Tony and Dave.
Community driven.
Bringing everything at once from around the way. Everything at once from around the way. Hey.
Please listen. We love you. Everything at Once.
Everything at Once.
It's time to introduce this show.
The best show on the face of the planet.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in today. We want to thank our Patreon producers, Brian G., Josh W., Ian D., Nick G., and Sadie M.
Patreon, it's an awesome way to support the show and say thanks. You can become a Patreon supporter by clicking the link below and choosing to be an intern, assistant, or producer level supporter.
If being on the production team is too much pressure for you, you can also send any contributions using our Venmo at Everything at Once Studios. We now want to thank all the local businesses who supported this episode. These businesses get the Everything at Once stamp of approval and are critical members of the Everything at Once community. We couldn't do it without them. We've all seen those cars covered in rust, rotting out the floorboards and shortening their lifespans. Don't let your car be a victim of the harsh Erie winters this year by getting a fluid film undercoating at Tommy's Automotive.
Winter is coming. Book your appointment today. Fluid film undercoating with Tommy's Automotive starts at $100. God, that's so cheap.
It really is a great deal.
It's a slamming deal. So you're going to want to call Tommy to get your quote right now at 814-384-8088.
With winter approaching, are there any last-minute details that you want to change or renovate around your home?
I might, but you know who to call.
Yeah! Ghostbusters!
No, Tony. No, not Ghostbusters. Solid State Construction.
Oh, yeah. Solid State.
Yeah.
Duh. Solid State takes pride in all their home remodeling projects. Solid State specializes in bathroom remodeling, kitchen renovation, window and door installation, custom design work, and more, including painting, flooring, drywall, sidewalk, decks. Get your free quote today by calling Nick at 814-397-7854. Solid people, solid product, Solid State Construction.
You know, Tony, with all these renovations from Solid State, I think we might have kicked up some bad energy around here. Yeah, oh yeah. Luckily, we know just the people to go see.
I know it this time. It's Ghostbusters.
No, Tony. Our friends at Cauldron and Thorne.
Wow. I feel really dumb right now, and I can't believe I didn't think of Cauldron and Thorne. The world's largest witchcraft and metaphysical shop, with everything a person needs to channel the spirit world.
Practice some self-care.
Find enlightenment.
Curse your enemies.
Protect yourself from your enemies.
Bless your friends.
Cleanse your space from negative energies. You can check out all the magical wares available for these different practices we all love and enjoy at Cauldron and Thorne, 2724 West 8th Street, or online at cauldronandthorne.com.
This week, we have an incredible guest for you.
This is the first time we've done this in a really, really long time.
How long?
About a year.
About a year, probably, since we've gone live. Well, we usually record and then publish afterwards. Mm-hmm. But today we're going live because we got a sweet event coming up after this that I'm looking forward to going to.
Mm-hmm.
Today we got Ashley and Benton
Hi,
in the
y'all.
building. Ashley
Hi,
from Grounded, Benton from Feed. Tell us about the event that's going on. Electroflux Music Series Hideout Extravaganza.
Yeah, well, tonight we have an event at Feed which is being done in collaboration with Electroflux.
There we go.
Booking musicians from Erie as well as Hudson Valley, New York, Cleveland.
There's a long list.
Yeah, no, there's a really long list of artists. And then we have Pulp Visuals is presenting The Hideout. The Hideout is basically
This looks really cool.
It is very cool. It's even cooler in person. It's a big stack of old tube TVs and arranged in sort of like, if you can imagine a living room that or a rec room that kind of like
a living-in van?
Yeah, it's sort of like spontaneously like metastasized and like you have extra TVs growing out of the TVs.
That's awesome.
And so Pulp Visuals is presenting also a large group of VJs and visual artists, both from Erie and from Pittsburgh, from Buffalo and Cleveland. So
Cool. That's awesome. And that's kind of your forte, right, Benton?
VJing is part of what I do.
But like the visual art and the tube TVs and stuff like that.
I'm definitely a fan of the old school tube TVs, that's for sure.
It's super interesting to look at your stuff, and I wonder how it's possible. And I just imagine in my head you or a person like you just connecting all sorts of crazy wires on a giant screen board with like VCRs and all that stuff. Is my imagination far off?
You know, now that you're saying that, Tony, I am realizing that I was inspired as a young kid watching, the switchboard operators.
For
the
like
phone
old
operators.
telephones, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of my many technological inspirations. But also just I saw stuff on TV as a kid. I actually wasn't allowed to watch much TV as a kid.
Oof.
My
TV.
go-to TV was basically, watching Electric Company when I was really young.
Oh, hell yeah.
And so those really crazy visuals, like I looked at that stuff and they, of course, what they were trying to teach you is like, oh, how to read banana, but me, what I was taught is like, wow, I want to make really cool, trippy visuals like that. And so
wait, what is this again?
So there was a children's television workshop show on PBS called Electric Company.
They would like dance and sing songs, right?
They would. But they were all basically trying to teach you to read, right? So they would just come up with all kinds of different ways to get you excited about seeing letters up on the screen. And one of the tricks is they used an early analog computer called the Scanimate. And the Scanimate was basically like this room filled with equipment in 7-foot tall equipment racks, if you can imagine like a server room, right? And so the Scanimate was like many 7-foot tall, 19-inch wide equipment racks filled with gear that were essentially like an analog way to do animation, right? And so long story short, basically they had this shtick they would do where they would put like the word banana underneath a camera, right? Or whatever word they were trying to teach you to read. And they would put that through an effect that would make it look essentially like spin art, right? And so one of the artists who was doing these special effects came up with the idea of like, oh, let's record the sound of the signal that actually warps the words and makes them all spin art looking, right? And then as the word unfolds, you would hear this sound change. So it would be like while it's kind of spin art, right? And then it would go, and it would be banana. The word would appear, and then you would hear a chorus of kids usually say banana.
Yes.
And so yes, it also helped me to learn to read, but at the same time, like what I really got out of it is like, someone does that. And that's what I want to do. But now that you mention it, I do have this, I think there was simultaneously like this association with people operating things like switchboards and whatnot because I knew that someone did that and that's what I wanted to do.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's super cool. I got a buddy who, I kind of just realized recently how physical like electric music is and how physical electricity is. My buddy's starting to make like guitar pedals, and he's just like, yeah, I just run electricity through different resistors to make these cool effects on guitar. And I'm like, wow, I don't know what I imagined in my head, but like hearing that just makes it very like tangible and understandable to me that this is electricity moving through it and we're reducing and raising the speeds and it's all waves. So it makes sense that it makes sound, because when I record a sound, I get wave files, you know what I mean? And when you look at them, you can like, if you look at certain words or you hear certain words enough in these wave files, you can pick out what that word sounds like in a wave. And it's just interesting stuff.
Huh.
So you realized this at a pretty early age that...
Oh, yeah. By the time I was 6, well, when I was, do you know that Dr. Seuss book, My Book About Me? And you would like fill it out. And oh, yeah, it was a book that... There is a Dr. Seuss book called My Book About Me, and basically you do things like color in your eye color and whatnot, right? And write, my eyes are brown, you know? And so there is a page that says, when I grow up, I want to be. And first I actually wrote mailman because that sounded like a really cool job to me, because I was like, oh, you know, the mailman gets to see all these different people's houses and like, you know,
Check
gets
out their
to
mail.
I feel that
explore.
way now.
You grew up in New York City too, didn't you?
I actually grew up in McCain and
Okay.
Edinburgh mostly, and a little bit in Mill Creek, you know, in Erie. But I went to New York City to go to school. I went there for my undergrad film and TV studies.
Sweet. Right
Yeah. So, but then I crossed out mailman, right? And I wrote monster movie maker.
Ooh, nice.
Because because that was the other passion I had, was not just making the trippy like colors. I was like, oh, I want to like do movies with like
Special
Dracula
effects, yeah.
and Frankenstein and special effects. Exactly. So yeah, so I knew pretty much by the time I was 6 that I wanted to make moving image art. And even though I had horror movies was one of my ideas of making them, I definitely was like, oh yeah, like what they do on Electric Company, I want to do that. So.
That's an interesting origin story.
Yeah.
Ashley, your turn.
Oh, I don't think that we could be more opposite, actually, in that way. I remember when we got our first computer in my family. My mom married my stepdad when I was like 7, and I think probably within a year he brought a computer home because he had a computer business, and I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah.
I had computer games, like I had Myst and Spelling Jungle.
Oh, nice.
Another reading adventure, which I loved that game. But like Myst, I didn't get it at all. And I never had a game system growing up, ever. Not once. Not even for a month did I have a game system. So I would like go over to my cousin's houses, and they had, you know, Nintendos and whatever, and I would watch. I like wasn't allowed to really play. I mean, they sometimes would, but they'd get frustrated because I'd be like,
you're bad.
I sucked. I just didn't, I don't know. I just like didn't understand like what the point was. I was like I'm going to read books. I like to be outside. Like I like to draw.
That makes sense for your business too, and your art that you create too, because it's very physical and very old school.
Yeah.
Like when I think of your art, I think of like printing presses.
Yeah. It's super old school. Like the letterpress that we have was made in 1886.
That's crazy.
So, and I actually just bought 2 book presses today, and one, I don't know when it was made, but it's probably like 100 pounds. Like I had to use a little dolly it's not that heavy, but probably like 80. And it's just like steel that is just meant to push down on paper to like help it dry. Like it's just super manual.
Yeah.
But I also like.
That's like your guys' style though, for sure.
Yeah, and but I also respect that this is like something that you're really interested in, and I'm kind of like in awe of people who are able to think that way, because it's hard for me to do that. But I also like when I was in undergrad, I was exposed to I started working at a tea house called Algebra Tea House.
Algebra Tea House.
Yeah, have you been there?
No, it's just an interesting name, math-focused name.
The guy that owned it was, I think he was Palestinian. I'm not sure exactly where he kind of wouldn't
say exactly where he was
he'd
from?
say one thing and then he'd say another. So,
But he liked math.
Sounds like algebra.
well, he said algebra or math is the origin is in Arabic.
yeah.
Right. So, so I think that's why it's named that. But he was a ceramic artist, and it was the whole place was like super wonky. Like all the cups were like weird blobs, and like the counters were
I
all
dig
like
it.
crazy shapes, and
Cool shop.
it was cool. It was, and when I was working there, I was the only person working, so I would cook the food and serve it, and make the drinks and serve them, and it was kind of like really personal. Like people would come and sit at the bar, and anyways, the reason I'm saying this is because I met my friend Jay Guy Lachlan, who is like a noise experimental drummer musician guy,
Yeah.
and he was like him and my other friend Chris Cannon. They were like, come to this thing. And I started going to these like really crazy, weird experimental music shows, and my mind was blown. I was like, whoa, this is so weird. Like, I don't know. I remember being in a room that was so loud that I felt like I was going to pass out. And I was like, just be cool. You're fine. And then the person next to me passed out.
Oh, no.
And
At least it wasn't you, though.
I was like, okay.
Thank God.
I felt validated, and then I was able to go on. But also just like disassembling your Jay guy would like disassemble his drum set and like blow into it and move it around the room. And then there were like puppet shows and just a lot of,
And where did you go to undergrad at?
I went to Cleveland Institute of Art.
Okay.
But it changed my like whole life
Yeah,
because
it sounds like it.
It took things in this trajectory that algebra was kind of the start of
So what kind of art were you doing before, or what kind of art were you originally going to school for?
when I like left high school, I thought art was drawing and painting and sculpture.
Sure, fine art, classic fine arts.
I didn't know anything else. And when I got to CIA, like the foundation year, I learned so much. Like I had one teacher, her name was Allison O'Daniel, who's also kind of like a sound. She does stuff with sound. She's deaf, and so and her dog,
Feels it.
her dog's name is Definitely.
Ah!
Yeah, but she showed it. She just like came in with this list of contemporary artists, and she's like, "We're gonna go through this entire list." And I realized that art was everything, and it really changed. I mean, it completely influenced what I make to today, because I make things out of like lottery tickets and dust and random stuff, and I understand now that art is experience and can be this thing that you like walk into, and I don't know, it can be anything.
Right, and I feel like anybody who appreciates modern art has like that eye-opening moment or that aha moment that you guys have both kind of shared about with I'm sorry, the TV show's escaping me, but that and going to algebra and stuff, you kind of have that moment where you're like, oh, this is much there's like a moment of ignorance, and then it's like, oh, there's actually tons of other things out there that I have no idea even exist or could be art.
Yeah, and that was really exciting. And I was just going to say that part of the goal, I wanted to move back to Erie to essentially I love Erie. My family.
Yeah, so do we.
Yeah, my family's here, but I'm glad that I left, and I'm glad that I like it, because I wouldn't have known all these things, I don't think, or it would have maybe taken me a little bit longer to get there. But I wanted to come back and have tools and access to the stuff that I wanted to make. I'm like a printmaker and paper maker, so Grounded was meant to be like this kind of like house for that, but also I really wanted to see experimental music and stuff happening. I don't want to make it. I don't even necessarily want to put all the shows together and stuff, which I haven't really, but Adam Holquist and Ethan Hayden, they have put a few experimental music shows together for Grounded, and that feels like people come to Grounded and they're like, whoa, like this is a really different, unique space that I didn't know could exist. And I that feels important, because when I lived here and then went and saw people doing things in weird warehouses and whatever, I was like, oh, like there's so much more to life. Like we don't have to live just within a specific, like I have a job, I have a house, like that's what I do. Like I want to see situations and spaces that are different and unique. Like
right.
I love that you have a recording studio here in your basement. Like that's,
Yeah.
you know.
Everything at Once Studios, baby. But it's super cool that a lot of people, as they're getting older, are returning to Erie and bringing these outside influences that Erie didn't really have before and bringing them to life. Like, the first time I listened to Adam Holquist's music or like any sort of music similar to his was like before he came on the show. I'm like, okay, because I research my guests and I listen to if they're a musician, I listen to their music or I check out their art or whatever it is, their business, whatever's going on. And I had never really I'd heard like music or like ambient music or noise music or things like that before, but I'd never heard something that was like noise music that I could chill and relax to and like enjoy. Like, not that I didn't I didn't particularly like that, but this I actually did like. You know what I mean? It spoke to me.
There's a lot of, noise is, I feel like, I don't know if we should even use that term.
Right, yeah.
But there's so many different, it's not just one thing. So,
Right.
I'm not really into extremely harsh.
Yeah. But there's some like jazz
abrasive
noise music and stuff like that I had listened to before. That was like the only thing that I really had that related or spoke out to like the genres outside of the normal stuff.
Which I would say that like free jazz and stuff can fit within that realm too. I know that, in continuing my journey, like the bands that played in the places that I, was in Chicago and whatever were, like Tiger Hatchery was a free jazz band, and they would play with like a, ambient noise person or, multiple. So like I think just anything that was kind of unique and not mainstream at all.
No, I like that.
Kind of fit under that heading, and I don't know. So there's parts of that I don't particularly love, but then there's parts of it that I really, really love, and I also feel like I really like to experience kind of noise music in person. Like, it's not always something that I want to just put on at home in the background.
Sure.
It's like something that I feel like is this in person. That's my personal feeling, I guess.
And I think that Benton's art really lends itself to that kind of stuff as well, with the different effects and things that are going on visually to that type of music, to the ambient music or the noise music or whatever.
Totally.
It's all just like super abstract and different. And waking up to that abstract and recognizing or being able to feel the feelings that the abstract stuff are trying to get is really like, I think, an interesting moment for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like it can be more nuanced too. Like there's, there's like the feelings that we have that are happy, sad, angry, and then there's like all of this like in between stuff that like doesn't always get attention. I think we don't talk about it as much in a kind of a mainstream way, but like noise and experimental stuff, and contemporary artwork, I feel like all
big time
they talk about those, or at least it's more interesting to me or I'm more interested in the sounds and stuff that I see that feels more nuanced in that way.
Yeah, it's fun to investigate and take the time to be introspective and see what this art makes me feel and what I can pull from it or recognize from it, rather than just seeing, not that like classical art isn't, or I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say, but like certain art you see, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a pretty picture. You know what I mean? And that's art.
Yeah, I think that whenever it can be like kind of expected, like I think that a lot of people,
it's all about like taking a deeper look.
I don't want to like generalize to specific areas, but I think that a lot of people really want to know what they're going to get. And so that's where kind of mainstream stuff fits in, because it's like I can predict what's going to happen. Whereas if you go and experience something that's maybe just more different, it's just something that's different and experimental, you're not exactly sure. There's a level of discomfort, I think, that comes with that people are averse to.
Right. And I think that's really beautiful too, that level of discomfort, or that that cognitive dissonance that builds up in your brain and makes you come to some sort of, because I feel like that's how all the great realizations that I've had in my life come, is through that uncomfortability, through that cognitive dissonance in my head and working through it, and then coming to some sort of realization that like not everything I know is always right.
Yeah, which I guess I think a lot about, because at this point in my life, I'm not saying I'm old, but I do feel like I want comfort. Like,
Sure,
I
yeah,
want
dude.
a warm blanket and pillows.
And that
like,
same Netflix show I watched a million times already.
yeah. So like it's, but I'm also an artist, so it's like, how do you
Break out.
like balance, like, I also think that something that comes with being like an artist is maybe feeling a little bit of guilt around wanting comfort and pleasure, because it's like, well, I need to be on the forefront, I gotta be pushing myself and uncomfortable. And so I think that maybe I kind of even think about that through my artwork a little bit, because
See, I don't know if I think that like making art is about uncomfortability. I think it's more of like the creative process when I think about it and tapping into it is really just taking what your subconscious gives you and putting that into the world. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but a lot of times it's just the stuff that you look past when you're in your waking moments. I get a lot of my ideas for creation through dreams.
yeah.
And those can be uncomfortable. Those are disorienting.
Totally.
Like, I find the dream state to be the ultimate source of creation for me.
That's really cool. Dreams are awesome. I love dreams.
I love dreams too. They're weird too. They're another thing that you can look at and interpret too.
Yeah, totally. It's like, why did that happen?
Yeah.
And-
what is going on?
And it also, I guess it's like, it makes me think about the idea that everything is happening all at once.
Everything at
forever.
once.
So like every possible scenario is playing itself out, and like that's like what is that? That's like quantum physics and stuff,
Yeah.
and like it's a provable thing,
That-
which I'm like, I don't understand how.
It all kind of ties into the name too, because you want everything like that was like kind of the thing. You want everything at once, but everything at once is happening at once that can possibly happen in
Right.
that moment. You know
But
what
why
I mean?
is this why am I here? Like,
Well-
why is this the plane that I'm aware of and existing in, and I'm not in the one that if I would have just chose to get up and walk out of the room, like.
Yeah, completely different timeline. We hop around timelines quite frequently around here.
It happens
that.
a lot.
I like that. That's good.
We work with parallel
Well, your
universes.
doppelganger in the other timeline is wondering the same thing about you.
Probably.
Yep.
Exactly.
Do you think you'd be as interested in the forms of art that you are if they became the popular form of art?
Okay, I'm going to take that one.
Yeah, go
the
for
funny
it.
thing is that I was about as experimental as they come, and now my medium is mainstream.
Yeah.
So my mentor, Bill Etra, he was one of the original visionaries of video art. And these original visionaries, like, they had to even build the very tools that they used. So not only were they basically creating an entire new medium of art, not just like we're going to make abstract art or surrealist or whatever, but literally creating an entire, medium of art. Like, you can't make art with TVs and stuff,
Right.
But they did that. But they also created the tools, right? And when I met Bill Etra was at a video history conference, and one of the very first things he said to me is, Benton, video will become a mainstream art form once the tools are as common as pencil and paper. And right now, do you have a pencil and paper or pen on?
Nope.
I actually do have a pen on.
Very good, very good. I actually
It's all on the desk
sometimes
somewhere.
have. Yeah, but
Actually,
the
I
point
do,
is,
in my bag.
we all have media art tools on our person most of the time, and we're actually less likely to have pencil and paper.
Right.
And so this is to say, I'm not saying that the way I personally make the art is necessarily mainstream, but it is very clear that we are in the early stages of video art being a mainstream medium, right? But as far as like what's made with it, personally, I'm actually. It was fine by me personally that no one understood what I did, right? I mean, it was a little bit frustrating because full disclosure, I left Erie because there was not the support for media art here, right? Erie was actually a really great place for art growing up, I thought. Like, met a lot of artists of all different kinds of genres, like...
That wasn't like my family wasn't necessarily like...
In that circle.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like, we didn't go to...
Museums or do art. Art wasn't really encouraged. It wasn't like, oh, yeah.
I would say my dad's a musician, but he didn't live here. And then his mom, my grandma, it was an artist too, but I don't feel like it was... It
wasn't accessible
for me
within your... Well,
right.
Let me only say that it's not like, you would go to the Mill Creek Mall and it was like... There's great art jumping out at you. But the point is, though, that for me, for my medium, like, and actually really a lot of different mediums, like PBS, the public television channel, which, again, I wasn't allowed to watch that much TV, but, like, I did tend to watch PBS and stuff. So I was like, wow, this is great. I could see all kinds of the actual then current, video art, media art. And they actually had a lot about other artists as well. And I guess for me, I kind of was like, again, I knew when I was 6, like,
right.
This is it, right? So I really kind of pursued it. And my art being both technology and, and art, right? My father was a computer electronics engineer, so he taught me some of that stuff and was supportive of me learning that. And my mom's an artist, so I did have that. But honestly, what was exceptional here was there was a lot going on. And great artists, great teachers I found, and then also like very actually, avant-garde, experimental, uncommon forms of art that you could actually tap into in a deep way. Except media art. Except video art. And literally, I was like a young artist, and I like approached curators and stuff, and they would give me shows from like my experimental comics and stuff that me and my friends were doing. I like showed at Bruce Gallery when I was either 16 or 17. Me and my friends like were part of this underground comic scene around the area. But like video art, not so much. They were like, yeah, there's no audience for that. We're not going to show you any of that stuff. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to leave. So for me, so to answer your question, sorry to come back,
no,
take a
it's
while
great,
to get back
good.
to it. I've experienced like the downside of being so underground that you literally can't get a show. It's not just like, oh, your art isn't good. It's like there is no audience for your entire medium. Like we won't show it. So I'll take it.
It's interesting, and now you're back here bringing it front and center with Feed.
Yeah, actually, so for me, like it's interesting to hear your perspective on, feeling. I actually relate to what you're saying. Actually, like I didn't like Mist either, right? Like, sorry, no offense, y'all, but
I just didn't understand.
well, I mean, my friend also from McCain really was into that stuff at that time, and but long story short, basically my approach to media art is really physical, right? So, and actually. I loved what you were doing from the very first time I heard about what you were doing, but I also, fell in love with your space and how you're combining a very physical process and making work and supporting people, discovering these techniques of making paper, of working at large scales, of working with technology that's, over a century old and all that. All that's lovely. And then I was going to these experimental music shows that Ashley was presenting at Grounded, right? So, that's actually the way I think of my art.
Yeah.
Right? It's very time-based, what I do. And so that was the other thing I was really into as a kid was very experimental music, which there's a kind of a longer path to it, but basically it came out of like at a very young age, getting into like Frank Zappa, which was, on the radio at WMDI at that time and stuff like that. And then that led to my interest in all these experimental forms of music, right? But I was studying piano and I was experimenting with film because I couldn't get video equipment in the early days of my trying to be a moving image artist. And so I was practicing piano. And, with the Super 8 films, you would take the cartridge and you would bring it to the drugstore and they would mail it to Kodak in Rochester, right? And you would get the film back a week later. And so I was playing piano. My mom got the call, like, from the drugstore, and she was like, "Oh, Ben, your film's ready." And I was like, "Oh, I got to finish my practice,
Right.
I hopped on my bicycle, went down to the drugstore, brought it back, and threaded the film in the projector, and it was out of focus, underexposed.
Right.
Like the color temperature was wrong. It was all orange, And I was like, "Mom, how could I ever learn to play piano if I had to wait a week for the notes to come back from the lab?"
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it, right? Like I need to work with video, and because that's how I'm going to really master a medium. And so for me, actually, the essence of what I do is, for me, the art that I'm interested in is actually totally physical, right? So it's like the idea of like, I do something and it yields a result and I see it right away.
Yeah.
I don't like rendering. I don't like,
Yeah.
getting film developed and all that. And I actually do like, the qualities of I love art that's made with stuff that isn't immediate, right? But for me, it's really actually a very physical thing, and it's born out of this love of improvisation and of music is basically where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well,
and where we can, one of the ways we connect, I think.
I guess I don't know everything about your work at all, but it seems like, if you weren't doing something physical, then you would do completely digital. Like you would just be almost like you're using TVs that have their old TVs and stuff. Like that's a physical object.
Right,
It's
right.
like
Very much more mechanical and analog than the new digital stuff that I've been fortunate enough to learn how to do photography and videography on. But you know what, that you bring that up, I have actually been looking at like old film cameras to buy just for the fun of like learning how to photograph on film with an old camera that I can't like look at it and then plug into Lightroom and then make beautiful, because like some of and that's another interesting thing is that like some of my photographs that I take that I really really love are complete garbage. It's just a huge blown out screen, you know what I mean? But then through the digital editing process, I'm able to make it something that's like really cool and it has like the old effect, you know what I mean? Or it has certain effects on it.
that. I feel like that is, to me, the reason that I love printmaking is because it feels like a collaboration with chaos. So I'm like, there are definitely printmakers who are, they want to be exact and pristine, and they're sorry, I'm a little away from.
Oh, you're good.
Their goal is to produce an edition of exactly the same prints.
The same time, every single one.
Yeah,
Impossible.
No, it's not.
And-
I mean, they do it, but I'm just like, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
That feels not super fun to me. I'm more interested in, once I put something through the press, lifting up the blankets and pulling the paper off and seeing what happened.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh, I like this a lot, or I'm gonna, run this through again and see what happens. And that's pretty much how I teach any of the students that I have right now. That's like my style or whatever. I'm not interested in perfection and making things. I want to see what happens when I process this material through something.
I think that's really cool too, because then you end up with a ton of unique finished projects that are like the same, but everyone is going to be it's going to have its own identity, especially to you who's very much, or anybody who really observes it and looks closely and sees the differences between the different projects.
I think it also has to do with like curiosity. Like I like to know things too. And I like to feel like I know things, but
Right.
But like I think also I don't know anything at all. So
Everything at once.
Yeah, and like I don't know, we're like living this like crazy life, and I want to explore it and experience it, and art is a way to kind of, I don't know, pull yourself out of like the norm, I guess. But whenever I don't try and like be super controlling with what I'm making, it's, I don't know, I learn things.
Yeah. I feel like that's also kind of science too. Like we're talking all art right now, but that's like the scientific method, you know what I mean? You're doing something and then finding out what the result is, and you don't really know. You have a hypothesis of how it might turn out, but boom, we're doing the science
And I mean,
and art.
there's science involved in printmaking, and what I'm sure, like
Oh,
definitely what you
absolutely.
do. You
Yeah.
know, like I have been. So there's one kind of printmaking called etching. It's intaglio, and you can take ferric chloride, which is an acid. It's essentially a salt, and put copper into it, and it'll. I don't know if anybody's ever done this here, but
Will it turn green?
no, it'll
My
eat
hypothesis was wrong.
It'll eat lines wherever you expose the copper, and it'll expose lines into the copper, and then you would drag ink across it, and you make prints from that. And I love etching. I love it a lot, and I haven't done it because I haven't, had an acid bath and, the tools that I need to do that. I've had an acid bath for over a year now, and the acid to put into the acid bath to actually etch copper, and I haven't done it. I don't, because
What?
I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm afraid that I'm not gonna mix the ferric correctly, and I'm like, I need to care for this thing. It feels like a living thing, and anyways, it feels very sciencey to me, and I'm avoiding it because I'm afraid.
It's interesting because I feel like that's like another quintessential piece of just being an artist in general, of like having your piece, or like figuring something out, or having an idea and then learning how to manifest it through your skills and knowledge.
Yeah.
And being scared to be like, oh my God, am I going to mess this up? Are people going to like it? Or am I an idiot? You know what
I feel like I've really felt that way for the last like 3 years with Grounded. It's like every week there's a new thing that I'm like, oh my God, am I going to like invest time into this, and like what if it doesn't work? Like I have a business now, so
Right.
I don't know, it's
It's interesting.
lot.
It's interesting, like a conundrum, like contradictory. You want to make something unique, but you're also chasing perfection in a way. No, I really believe it. Like
but
same with
dislike your perfection,
but
and want your
dislike the
prints to
perfection.
be all you need.
Well, that's what science is like too. Like it's imperfect, and you want to find new things and explore and create. But at the same time, you're using these theories and testing your hypotheses to get as close to perfect as you possibly can, to say this is how things are.
I'm gonna say that honestly, for me, it's kind of both, meaning like there's the imperfection, and like I accept the results and the trust the process, so to speak, and then there's the I gotta get it right kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Right, both take
and
hold.
often, and for me, the thing that the line is that, so I'm trained traditionally, right, in my non-traditional medium. I went to film and TV school, right? And so I actually know the rules and all that.
Yeah.
And so if I'm doing something like editing a video about something that's happening at Feed or another artist, like I just do it until it's perfect. Like I'll
Right.
just edit and edit and edit. Oh no, I need to change one frame here, blah, 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 right? But if it's a process, then I think that is part of the joy for everyone, both the makers and for the people who experience it, because they're like, honestly, like we have so much perfection in these highly sophisticated media art tools that we all carry around.
Sure.
That, like, I don't think that's what really makes people happy. It's the rough edges, right?
This idea, it makes me think about like how we determine when a piece of artwork is finished,
Yeah.
because there's like the Fibonacci spiral, that there's certain things that are appealing to our brains and our eyes, that are just like scientific. But when it comes to something like, I don't know, like for my personal artwork, which I haven't been making a ton of in the last few years, but the most recent thing I made is just like a clothing rack that I spray painted, and then I made S-hooks and made little handmade sheets of paper with collage on them. I don't know what this is about. It's something I just felt like I needed to make.
Cool.
But I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, what does this need? There's no rule. Like it's just this weird thing I'm making that has no reference to, I mean, it's just like, okay, there's a clothing rack, there's paper on it. Like, I guess that maybe the perfectionist part comes through like, is there an idea that I'm trying to convey through this thing that I'm making? And how can I more perfectly convey that idea? But like visually, if it's just just purely visual, it's like I'm completely the gauge. Like I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I think maybe this should be taller. Why? Like, is it because it would work better if it was at eye level? Like, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean for it to work better? What does it mean to like strive for perfection in a piece of artwork that's not really easily, explainable or definable by like conventional rule of thirds, spacing terms or whatever.
I think that I don't know, it's interesting to me, and you look at it from like the artist side, and then you look at it from the like what would the word I would use, like the person who appreciates the art. A viewer. Thank you. Jesus God. Every once in a while that happens. But like, it's a relational thing, maybe not so much like the perfections and the imperfections as something like we've talked about this many times on this podcast when we've talked to musicians. Like Tony hates mainstream music, like top 40 music. He hates it. I kind of appreciate it. I think that like anything that you can create that knocks someone out of that homeostasis of normal life, like it could be, a Renaissance painting that's like down to every single detail being correct. And the art it's about, at least from the viewer's side to me, is like how many individual people can you have look at this and have their own personal experience, right?
Absolutely.
That does feel important to me, definitely, in regard, because I think the art world can be really feel very exclusive, and a lot of contemporary art can feel very like unapproachable, and you're like,
Yeah.
But some people may come up to it and be like, oh, this is beautiful, this is whatever, I love this. But to me, it feels important I like to use like everyday objects and stuff like that. It's just a personal thing. Like I would like for my artwork to like kind of reach an average person, and
A normal, not like a lay person that's not super into art.
yeah, like I would like to. That's kind of that I feel like that has been a goal for me. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's more like I just have this weird idea and I want to like get it out. But I feel like more recently, in the last like 5 years, my work has kind of been like, I don't want to be exclusive. I don't want to feel too exclusive. However, I love stuff that's like so out there that like it may be like abrasive or difficult for people to deal with. I appreciate that as an artist.
It's interesting because we want everything at once, and I'm not just saying that because it's our name, but like there's so many different contradictions that I find. Like I want my art to reach tons of people, and I want people to feel different things when they view it, but I also want it to be understood sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a message, I have an idea that I'm trying to portray, and people will misconstrue it. I'm like, you're viewing my art wrong. You know what I mean?
I feel like once you put it out to the public, though, like it's no longer yours.
Totally.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
So, you could definitely, I have an intention, artists that we present have intentions, but ultimately it really is about how the work is received that is what it becomes, right? Otherwise, don't keep your art in a closet.
Right, yeah. Keep it just for you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take a little time maybe to talk about our collaboration.
Oh, yeah, we're
if we
getting-
can.
Yeah, absolutely,
Awesome.
definitely.
Yeah.
Really going off the deep end here with other
Yeah,
stuff.
we're going way abstract.
Oh, well, let's go deep, even deeper. But yeah. So Ashley and I have been collaborating and to present work at each other's spaces. So we did one collaboration in mid-October, and at Grounded, and now we're going to do another one in a couple weeks at Feed.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And so, broadly, well, again, we have this, besides art and besides the fact we both have spaces, we have this connection with being really into this kind of experimental forms of music. But, I have wanted to work with you for a while now because I actually am excited by the idea of bringing together very ethereal art, right? Art made of light, art made of electricity, maybe not even visual art, right? Which we can talk a little bit about what Alex is doing. But like bringing that together with a very physical form of art. And your art is very physical. Like, I actually think that's one of the qualities of your work. And everything you're doing at Grounded is not just like, oh, it's a print studio, but like, it's like those 80-pound, presses, right? Like it has
tactile.
It's tactile and it's got mass. Exactly right. So, so do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things we're talking about doing?
Well, so
in November,
Alex is going to be presenting. She's going to be performing. I think she said probably like an hour. Or so. And I can't remember what it's called. What is it? What is this kind of printmaking? Like, what is this?
Cymatics is truly a form of a technique, right? A school of techniques that actually really brings together this time-based ethereal art, right? Sound, and physically manifests it, right?
Yeah.
So cymatics is like if you've seen
like the waves on a record.
That would be that is a literal turning of a wave into a physical form, but it's very hard to see those grooves, right? So your example of the display of the waveforms would be another example. But usually people talk about cymatics to refer to things like, have you ever seen where they do, it's called a Chladni plate. They take sand and put it on like a plate and put that on the speaker, and they try different frequencies, and then different frequencies that resonate with that physical plate will yield different patterns of symmetrical patterns of sand on that plate.
Very interesting.
So
Familiar, but I didn't know what it was called.
cymatics, yes, Cymatics. So. Yeah, so I don't actually.
You're doing a much better job, fully explaining this than I.
Well, let me take it as far as I understand it from my end, and then you can actually finish from your end, because I only have a very loose understanding of once it enters the pigment. But basically, so Alex is taking speakers and putting sounds through it and making prints with it, which, as I understand it, in a way, it becomes like a marbling kind of process.
That's my understanding of it too.
Okay.
I haven't done this.
Oh,
Alex has done this. So, but I have seen the prints from it, and I kind of saw video of her doing it, and that's exactly what it is. So,
but is it marbling that maybe has more of a sense of pattern than
I'm guessing
normal?
that the pattern reflects the sound.
Yeah.
So how do you capture the sand?
You don't. There's no sand. The sand is would be essentially the pigment floating in water, I think.
Okay.
So whenever you marble paper, and I haven't done a lot of this.
That's
even,
okay.
Even though I'm a paper maker.
You've done it more than all of us.
I think I've maybe done it once, but
Still more than us.
I think that you might have to add something to the water like dish soap, so that then
It
you
separates.
can take sumi ink and take a paintbrush and dip onto the top of the water, and it'll spread out and create its own patterns even without sound. But with sound included, I think it will make the patterns that are coming from the sound in the sumi ink.
And then you dip.
I'm guessing it's sumi ink. And then you take a sheet of paper and you kind of pick up the ink, and it'll be on the surface.
I've seen that on TikTok at festivals, people doing that with their arms and stuff.
I think it's the same.
Except you're using sound to make the design of the colors. That's gonna be neat.
I know. I think it'll be really cool.
And
Will be cool.
she creating like her own soundtrack to do this to make this stuff.
I
Yes,
wish
very
she was
nice.
here because I
Neat.
don't know. I don't have
Well,
the answers.
I know a little bit only because I'm helping from the media art the media art end, right? So we are, one of the things we're doing at Feed is like Grounded, we're actually trying to support artists to create the work we have the space, first of all, and we have means to present work, right?
Sure.
But we also have tools to make work. So so Alex is taking some speakers from us that she's going to use for this process.
Yeah.
But also something I actually was not aware about in Alex's practice is she's doing sound art as well. I wasn't originally, I mean, I guess of course I should have realized that because she's doing sound art for printmaking, but she also she's a musician and has like a sound art practice without any physical manifestation. So she's also going to be performing as well, doing a piece. And I think she's borrowing
That's
some
great.
effects pedals and synthesizers and
That's
stuff.
great.
From us.
I haven't talked to her about it, but
Okay.
I'm happy to hear that because I've known Alex. We went to undergrad together, so it's been like I don't know how many years, but we lived together in Austin, and I feel like while we were there, she was making a lot of music, and it was like extremely beautiful and wonderful. And I haven't heard her make a ton since then, but I'm happy to hear that. It's been kind of sporadic over the years that I've known her, I guess, and there's like one song that I can think of that she recorded probably three years ago. That was like really intense and awesome, but I don't always see her making music, so I like love to hear that she's going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm
Sorry, I
gonna
didn't already know.
I'm gonna take this moment here to shamelessly talk you guys up because no, seriously, because just the stuff that you guys got going on is just has such like a big city feel to it, like something that
You wouldn't think of.
you
when
wouldn't think of
Erie.
Erie, right? And like not only like that, but it's so like open and accessible. Like this sounds like the kind of cool stuff that I'd find if I went to like New York and someone was gatekeeping and I had to go to like a bodega and find like a side door to go to like some super cool like art show. But it's just right out in the open, and it's very neat that a place like Erie has people like you that are presenting these things to the people and just making it something available. It's awesome.
Feed makes me feel that way. Feed feels very big city to me, and I love that you exist here. I love that not
Yeah.
just you, but the whole entity that Feed exists
Erie
here. It
has-
makes me feel
Well, thank you very much. But how does it make you feel?
it makes me feel not alone.
Well, so I likewise feel about you and what you're doing at Grounded that this is like an exceptional spot, like not just for Erie, right? But Grounded is a unique space, really, in my experience, right? I've actually in New York City, they have a few really. I don't know what the term would be, but very, spaces that are akin to Grounded, right? There are places that have like foundries that have typesetting using, 1800s letter sets and whatnot, right? But and so you do get that, and you get some other, very traditional forms of bookbinding and bookmaking and printing, et cetera, et cetera. But I am not aware of any place in New York City that really has the extent of the paper making activity that you do there. And certainly, it's just a really, really cool space. And your art, honestly, this artist right here is
Okay.
Ashley Pastore does work.
Thank
Your
you.
work is at a very, very high level.
Thank you.
Like phenomenal work.
Thank you.
As far as Feed goes, what I'll say about Feed is that it is actually unique in the world. Like not, again, there's not really anything quite like it, even in New York City. There are like really amazing spots all over. here and there. I'll just cite like one place that's only 2 hours away from here is Alfred University in Alfred, New York. And they're really a very unique place in the sense that they're an art school that does have fantastic facilities for all kinds of like traditional crafts. Like a lot of they're known for glass making and for people who are doing a lot
I
of
know
pottery
somebody
and
who
stuff.
went to school there.
But also they are
made
one of the great media art schools in art schools in the United States of America, and for a long time too. So there are a few places scattered here and there, but the thing that's really unique about Feed is that there's no space that has like the tool set that we have and the space that we have. And the fact that we aren't in New York City, like honestly makes it a bit easier to do some things that would be very hard in New York, right? Like, so things related to space or things related to, time spans and whatnot. I will say that I have to take one more moment to acknowledge that these spaces do exist in New York. Like, I've had an artist residency there in a space for now 6 years. In this one space is a big old abandoned, essentially it's like a mansion, but it was built as an old folks home. And so these things do exist in New York because there's like people who have like real estate and they're passionate about the art, and they will try to support arts when buildings, for example, are being like collected in an area and they're going to be demolished to put up a giant skyscraper. There's a place called Chishama, for example, that does that. But it's still like really generally in places like New York City, the idea is that they're going to tear it down and put up something really big, right? Or like, sure, I'll let, artists use this building for 10 years because it's just getting more valuable all the time, and because the neighborhood's going up and we're going to put a giant skyscraper there. Feed, we're going to try to stick around, folks. But, and so part of the idea there is actually to preserve this beautiful old building, and you have a beautiful space.
I love
sure.
Feed though. Feed's the building is, I love it so much.
Ladies and
And I love, you described like Grounded, how there's a lot of heavy, like it's the house of a lot of equipment and stuff that I love. I love my shop as well. But I love that Feed is so open. I love that there's so many rooms and so many floors and just all this space that like, it's easy to go there and be like, oh, I could do this in here. That feels really special. And I love it. It feels great there.
I'm going to talk to the camera directly for a second, ladies and gentlemen.
We're looking at you.
This is me. No one else endorses this hypothesis, but we're on the scientific kick today.
Okay.
And my hypothesis, we have Feed, we have Grounded, we have spaces that are intending to continue to be around and not be demolished. Therefore, Erie art scene, greater than New York. You heard it here first. From me.
I mean, I think that there is something really kind of special and unique, and I try to remind myself of this because sometimes it feels difficult to be here. But I think that there's something really special about being here and not in New York, or even Pittsburgh or Cleveland, or I like love those places too. But I really like that we're doing this here.
Yep.
I think Erie has a strong artist community here too, from our musicians to our visual artists to our theaters to all these different things. Like, we're not in New York City. There aren't a million of them, but the ones that are here do phenomenal work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that is heavily understated
Yeah.
around the area. You know what I mean? You see these art.
Well, and I think I love that you have the ability to bring people from other places to Feed. I would really love, I've been saying this for the whole 3 years that Grounded has been functioning. I really would love to be able to have like an artist residency program to bring people from other places to use the space and make the work that we were housing Erie Arts and Cultures, some of their resident artists, and that always felt so good and beneficial to everyone at Grounded, and even the artists coming from another place. And it was always interesting to listen to their response or their feelings about Erie, the visiting people.
People like Erie.
People like it here.
We had a couple of the resident artists from Arts and Culture that were staying at Feed and other places, and they all loved it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like I'm a couple of them. I remember talking to them about like, they're like, maybe I could move here. And I'm like, that's so cool. I love.
Right. Yeah.
It's really. It's. I think that it seems like. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard that people say like Erie has a self-esteem problem.
Oh yeah, big time. It's okay to love Erie. It's our slogan, and it's the worst slogan ever.
I think it's kind of funny. I feel like
I
it's
kind of like the self-deprecating thing.
Yeah, it's like I don't
It's
mind.
the best sunsets in the world.
Yeah, I think that's kind of. I think it's funny. Yeah, but I mean, this lady stopped me on the beach the other day, like running. She like was running up to me, and she had a buoy in her hand. She was like, "Do you want this buoy?" It was very weird and a unique.
Did you take it?
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, she picks up plastic, but she spent a lot of time talking to me like I didn't live in Erie, like saying how people in Erie don't appreciate it, and look at how beautiful it is here. And I was like, well, I do live here, and I choose to live here.
Right.
But I do feel like that's like kind of an underlying issue. The people that I hear kind of talk badly about Erie are people that are from here.
As like a kid, like that was like the goal. Like,
oh yeah, I like
get out.
You know
I got
Like,
out.
leave,
That's like all I wanted to do was leave.
Right,
You know, but I came back, and there's a million reasons why I'm here, and I'm happy to be here. But I think that it helps to remind me and other artists and other people that exist in Erie. When other people come in and they're like, "This place is amazing.
Yeah.
Like this, I love this." Like.
And that is something that, there is one exception. Like some people can't handle the winters, so some people
for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, the
cold.
winter
But
suck.
other than that, really, sincerely, like
I like the winters.
artist, me too. I like the winter.
I don't.
I appreciate this.
I didn't like it back in in my young adulthood, but like now I just have come to love it. But artists who come to Feed and who experience Erie, they really love it. And furthermore, they love the people here, right? So there's definitely something going on here, and that's why, I already knew there was a lot going on here as a kid. It was that one thing, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, there's no audience for video art. Mm-hmm. Like that was the one thing from the then, kind of like main whatever the artists who were like at that time like the scene, right? Mm-hmm. So but they were very open to everything else. It was just like that technology was like a little bit too new and not yet familiar to them. But now, like honestly,
you have so many people
it's
engaging
mainstream.
with Feed. It's like I'm like jealous. I'm like, teach me.
Come on in. Come on. Well, come on in.
Sav,
We're gonna.
Sav is at Grounded for the Spooky Wieners thing that we
Yes.
did, and I'm like, okay, seriously, like, tell me how to get people to events, because, it's just hit or miss. We can have an entire class fill at Grounded, or we just had this fermentation festival that was put on by Steph Seiner, who owns Eat Your Yard.
Yeah.
Or not Eat Your Yard. That's Tess. Who owns Wildfield Farm.
Okay.
And there were so many people that came to that, and I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is great. But sometimes when it's just Grounded doing like an event, there's not a ton of people, and I'm like, what is going on?
Actually, it's very simple. The secret is that literally, I figured out pretty early on that the key is to have local artists and visiting artists.
And that they promote what's going on.
People are cross-promoting.
Right, exactly.
Because Erie is, it's both a good and a bad thing, but we are we have a little bit of a locals only kind of, local surfers only kind of thing, know. But that is maybe the negative way to think about it. But the positive way to think about it is that the Erie cultural scene does show up for its own, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think the secret has really been that just to try to like always have this combination of local artists and visiting artists. And frankly, the other thing is that we early on like realized it doesn't work as well for us, especially because we were newer, right? To do something with like maybe one artist, right, or two artists, and so we tend to do things like with a number of people participating.
Sure.
Is
Well,
generally the rule.
here's a current call for artists who want to participate.
You guys hear
in
him? Listen.
Back to you.
print making, paper making, really any kind of art making that you are interested in. If you would like to chat with me, and we can figure out a way to get you into Grounded. We actually have a bunch of space that's unused currently, so.
It's an amazing space.
I remember when you guys started there. I was like the building's all painted now, and it looks nice from the outside.
Yeah. Well,
I
and
never
that's
have been there though physically, which is sad.
You should come.
Yeah,
You're
I know.
welcome
I'm a bad
anytime.
friend. Sorry.
It's okay. The front building is actually where there are how many artists? So Broken Egg Clay is a ceramics studio. Emily Gaudioso, she is in the basement in the front building. Soul Royalty, she is a embroidery business. Kem Brazda, she does paintings and drawings and mixed media. Kaylee Me, she's an illustrator. Dave Tamulonis rents a space.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Natural States Collective, which is Curtis Wadley, they're in the front building. Who am I missing? I don't want to miss anyone.
There's a bunch
There's
of
also a
people there.
therapist that I'm just not going to say their name, and then there's a back building. So
Mm-hmm.
like the warehouse building is where I am. Alex has a studio there. So does Eric Burtis. And that's where all the print stuff is. But the front building that's painted black, that's a bunch of different other artists that are basically part of Grounded too.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna say a few things, if I may, about Grounded. So the thing about Grounded is that it's a workspace, right? But it's kind of a playground too. Like it's basically this.
I like that.
Seriously, like it's a very, like when you come there, there's people working both independently and together, and the space really lends itself to that. So I think that one thing is that sometimes people have an impression like, oh, I can't do that, or I don't want to do that, or I'm nervous about doing that, or I won't understand it, or blah, 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 blah. There's like Grounded is a very open and inviting space, and you're a very inviting, welcoming person as well. And so, it just feels like a nice environment to be in. It's a creative space, and it's a very like kind of, energizing but tranquil kind of space as well. So, people should go check it out. and,
Yeah.
like,
It's
do
so
stuff
nice
there.
just to be around like other people that are all like doing something that's innovative and creative. That's one of the hugest benefits I think that this podcast has had for me personally, is just having like good conversations with interesting people that are doing cool things around Erie.
It's good to like make connections. I think that we can become really isolated. We're like, oh, we go to work, we go home, and we live in our like little bubble. But I'm guilty of that too. Like I'm like, I just want to go home and like relax, But this has been also, I would agree with you, like a very nice experience. And I'm like, oh, there's people.
We're doing people, and they're doing stuff that's cool that I want to help with or be involved in or whatever.
Even here in Erie, PA, and it's like it makes it kind of feel like the world is like a bigger, but also smaller and like very
graspable, easy to attain.
Yeah,
accessible.
Guys, it's starting to get late. We've been podcasting for over an hour now.
Okay.
So
can I talk about the dates really quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tonight, for
Thanks
anybody
for
watching
keeping
this
us on
live, there's an event happening in about 50 minutes at Feed. And so Electroflux is Adam Holquist, who Ashley was talking about and Tony was talking about, curated these artists from Erie and the region to play music. And and beyond the region, also Hudson Valley, New York. And then Pulp Visuals has brought together a bunch of artists to do visuals on these like vast numbers of TVs. There might be 100 TVs in the space. Like, it's a lot. And then we also have several artists who are doing, are presenting installations. There's an artist from New York named Iki Nakagawa, and she has an open studio you can do a tour of. And she's done like documentation of waterways, like of restoration of like waterfronts in an urban environment.
That's cool.
And it's spatialized documentary is maybe the easiest way to put it. We have another group, a duo from New York, who have parked a news van in our garage that they modified for like video art. That's ESP TV doing Unit 11.
Oh, they did that one show, right, about consent?
That is actually Liz Slagus, who has a project called Sex Ed Bake Shop.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes,
super cool stuff.
That is a really cool project. But that is actually featured in our window right now, but it's not installed at the moment as it was. That was a pop-up, like a weekend-long pop-up. In that same space, we have Jessica Reich, who's doing like a projection mapping. If anybody doesn't know what that is, you just make a projection map a surface. And so she has a faux crocodile purse that she's projecting faux crocodiles onto.
Sweet.
And oh my gosh, what else? I feel like I'm leaving somebody.
So many things.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So come on down.
Yeah,
And
come
then-
down. We're excited to go too.
And November 22nd is Ashley, and so Grounded and Feed will collaborate. And so we have Alexandra Anthes who will present the cymatic printing. And we have Marcellus Cooper doing a story drive, like audio cassette recordings of stories. And you can call a phone number and leave a story and it'll animate it.
Nice, that's cool.
And oh my gosh, there's so many artists. We have Ginny Brockie will be presenting like digital illustrations done on iPad. And then we have Maza Winery will be joining us.
Yes, and who's the tamale?
That's Julio Reyes from Julia's Restaurant will be bringing his delicious food. So
Excellent.
November 22nd, night before Thanksgiving.
2 days after my birthday, so
Woo,
birthday party.
happy birthday.
All right,
Almost.
and the Ashley Pastore birthday party.
Fantastic. Well, guys, this has been a super fun conversation. I'm so glad you guys came down and we got to put this out for people. Super excited to head to the stuff going on at Feed tonight. We hope we see you all there. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to all our sponsors, the people who supported us, our Patreon people. Y'all are the best. And thank you everybody who likes, shares, and follows. Y'all make this all possible. Peace.
Thank you.